Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. It's actually snowing outside, so I thought why not create a video for YouTube, a simple project for YouTube for those followers that watch me on YouTube but don't do the live workshops, etc. So I thought I'd vary it up a little bit. I'm going to use the paint that we've used before on a Facebook Live. I'm going to use the same colours, but hopefully do something a little bit different and actually approach them in a different way, use them in a different way than we did in the previous Facebook Live. So I'm still going to add this to my journal. What I've done is I've got this 20cm canvas and I've actually drawn around the canvas just to give me a circle that will actually fit in my journal. So it will fit in like that. So it will fit in the journal. Am I in the photograph? We are, yes. So it'll actually fit in the journal. Just move that out the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my gel press. And I'm just reaching for my brayer. Have you noticed there's always a couple of things you always forget if you're going to do a Facebook Live or anything like that? There's always something that you need to reach for. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my gel press. I'm going to use the 6x6" circle one. What I like to do is add my gel press to an acrylic block just because it makes it a little bit more stable. So when you get your gel press or gel plate, whatever you call it, it's sandwiched between two pieces of plastic. As you can see, mine is well used. Just take that off both pieces, and then what I'm going to do is just add it to my acrylic block, just because it makes it easier for me to handle. I find it easier to grab hold of, etc. So it's much more simplified for me. So I'm going to use the colours that we've used in the previous Facebook Lives and the same colours that I've used in my pre-recorded workshops. If you would like to join the pre-recorded workshops, you can just email me, or you can join my group on Facebook, and that's got all the details on there. I haven't cleaned my gel press. I don't want to clean it. There's no need. You can clean it if you wish. You can clean it with a damp cloth or a baby wipe, but don't use anything abrasive on there. If you use anything abrasive, then you're going to mark your gel press. I know that some ladies keep their gel press in between a piece of copier paper, especially if it's brand new, just until it's used for a short while. But I just keep mine in between the two pieces of plastic. Unless they get really marked, the plastic, then I don't use them. But I do keep it in the original packaging. Excuse me for sniffing there, which is really polite. So I hope you can grab yourself a brew. You can maybe spend an hour or so crafting along with me. Maybe you can add in the messenger what you've been doing this afternoon or what you've got planned for the weekend. But I thought, because it's snowing outside, it's cold, I can't do my gardening still. I'm still planning things of what I'd like to do outside, but I can't get out there, I can't dig or anything like that. So I may as well create a page and hopefully inspire you along the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a scrap of card. As you can hear, I'm actually tearing the scrap of card. I'm just wondering whether to, no, yeah, I'll just use a scrap of card because I can use that however I want. So as you can see, I haven't cleaned my brayer. It's all dry, so it's absolutely fine. And I always store my brayer upright like so, just so that I don't cause any marks on the brayer. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to make some room on my desk, which isn't easy. So bring the gel plate in here and just bring my brayer in here so you can see it. If I turn it this way, it'll give me a little bit more room. There we go. So what I'm going to do is every time I add paint, I'm going to brayer it off onto any excess paint onto the white card. So if you want, grab yourself a brew, grab yourself a chocolate biscuit. Mind you, that might not be a good idea while we're creating, but just grab yourselves a brew and have a nice relaxing brew while we're working together, while we're creating together. So I hope you're all well, and I hope you're enjoying the weekend. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with lemon. The colours that I'm using are lemon, tangerine, lime. I can only pick 3 up at a time. Lemon, tangerine, lime, turquoise, magenta, ruby and fuchsia. So those are the colours that I'm going to play with. And I've not pre-prepped anything. I'm just going to go with the flow and enjoy what I'm doing, like I always do when I'm doing a journal page. Just go with the flow. And what I'm going to do is I'm only going to work with small amounts of paint. So hopefully I won't need to bray it much off. So I'm going to add a little bit of the lemon just in a couple of places and just bray that lemon over my gel press. Just a nice even layer. So nothing complicated, just a nice even layer. And I'm just braying that lemon off onto the extra piece of cardstock. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that down onto my circle. Like so. I'm going to place that down. And I don't necessarily want it bang in the centre. It can be a little bit more random than that. It doesn't need to be bang on the centre. And I'm literally using this as if it was a stamp. So I'm using the gel press as if it was a stamp. And what you can do is just pick it up, pick that up, and then just rub over. Just rub that over. And then just lift. So obviously at the moment, all as you get is a very random circle with the lemon paint. Okay, so that's all we're getting at the moment, and that's what we want. We're building up the layers very slowly, so don't panic too much. I'm going to get whatever on my gel plate as well. I'm going to put the lids on my paint because from my previous Facebook Live, I left them open and then the tops do dry out a little bit, which we don't want. As you can see, I've got some crusty bits of paint just on the top, which I don't want. So I'm just going to add touches of the orange now. Add touches of the orange. And what I want to do is I don't want to cover the whole gel plate. I want to leave some areas open. I don't want to cover it all. Brayer off the excess and then use the gel press as a stamp again. And I can line it up because I'm using the acrylic block, which means I can line it up exactly where I had it before. So it's not a problem. I can turn it over and then I can just rub. So I'm actually using the gel press like you would if you were using an acrylic block and a stamp set. So as you can see, I'm just adding the light layers of the paint. That's all I'm doing, adding light layers. It's a lovely way to add paint because it restricts you from adding too much paint. It's great because it stops you from adding too much. So what I'm going to do now is add a touch of the green. And what I'm trying to do is add light layers, not too much, and not cover the same areas each time. Don't cover the same areas with the paint. Just cover different areas each time. And I'm literally adding a very light layer. There's hardly any paint on there. If you think there's not enough, then just add a little bit more. That was a little bit, you know, too light. So just add some of that green. And again, you're going to follow the same process. And you can move it round in different ways, but you can line it up on the same circle because you can see below the acrylic block. So just press firmly, turn that over, and then just rub on the back. If you've got dexterity problems, just use your fist like I'm doing, or you can take your brayer and just brayer the back, especially if you've got dexterity problems and you can't put any pressure on your wrists. So just use your brayer and then lift it again. And you can see I'm just building up layers, and these bits around the edges are just off the texture of my gel press, which is absolutely fine. I don't mind that at all. So I don't clean it in between. There's no need to clean that. And now we're going to take the turquoise, and I'm going to add some layers of the turquoise. So I'm going to add some, maybe some in the centre as well. But just the reason we're adding light layers is because you can't take that paint away, but you can add it, but you can't take it away. So it's better to add light layers, keep adding, and then going back and adding a colour that has maybe got lost along the way afterwards. So just making sure that's almost lined up. There we go. So I've now got the turquoise. So obviously if you add too much paint, you're not going to see any of the layers underneath, which seems a shame when you've spent all that time layering it. So just use your brayer or your hand, whichever you find the easiest. And then I can just remove this. And each time I'm getting different layers of the colour. You just keep playing with that. Oh, I'm putting the wrong thing away here. Just keep playing with that. So what I'm going to do now is add the magenta. Now the magenta is a very strong colour, so you need to be careful how much you add. You don't want to add too much because it'll overpower everything. So just be careful how much you add of the magenta. And you're working, because you're only adding light layers of paint, you need to work reasonably quickly with your gel press. You don't want to work too slowly so the paint dries on the gel press. It's okay if the paint dries on the gel press because you can always add a white layer, but then that might obliterate everything else that's underneath. So you just need to be aware of that. So just take your time, lift that up. Again, you can brayer just to make sure you've got that at the top. So you can see we're gradually just building the layers of the paint. And it's always, I think it's always a case of you are one layer away from creating magic. I know I called that my previous workshop, but I do feel like with these layers, it does take time before you fall in love with it to keep continually adding the layers. Now, this is a super strong colour. This is the ruby. And I'm always very wary of the ruby. I don't want to add too much of the ruby because I do find that is a super strong colour. So I'm always a little bit more careful about adding the ruby, just so that it doesn't overpower everything. You don't want it to take over the whole design. So I very rarely add lots of the ruby paint. Just add that now. You see, the ruby just gives it a bit of life. The ruby brings it to life a little bit. It gives it some oomph. Now, I don't want to go back straight away to the fuchsia. Now I could add fuchsia if I want, just all the way around the edges, just so that it gives some darkness. But what I want to do is I'm going to use my scrap of card and just make sure there's nothing too wet on the gel plate. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to create mud. So I'm just going to pick up anything that's wet on there. I mean, this would be great for stamping a flower onto. So you could use that for that kind of thing. What I want to do now is go and add a little bit of lightness with some yellow. Preferably without that bit of a crumb on there. I just want to add some yellow. And what I'm doing is I'm just adding a light layer. I don't want to be too hasty and add too much of that yellow. Because again, it's about layering. It's about layering and taking your time. Taking your time to add that colour. the yellow is just going to lift everything. So what I'm going to do now is, what you do is you look at this and you think, right, which colours have gone missing now? Which colours do I need more of? So that's what you do. So looking at that, I'm going to add more yellow in a different way afterwards. So looking at that, I want a touch more orange. So I'm going to add a little bit more orange to my gel press. And as you see, each time, obviously the gel press is very clever. You can add lots of stenciling and everything, but that isn't it. This process isn't about adding stencils. This process is just about getting used to your gel press and adding layers. It's not about let's add loads of stenciling. It's all about getting used to your gel press with layers of paint. That's all this process is about, and creating a background at the same time. So now I'm developing the richness of the colours. So what I want to do now is I want to just make sure that my brayer is completely free of paint. So just keep brayering that over. And what I'm going to do is take some of my turquoise now. Take some of the turquoise. And I just want to make sure I add a little pop of turquoise. So I'm going to take that. And what's good about this is, because you're only adding the light layers each time, you're not going to ruin anything too much, because those light layers, they're very light on the top, and you're not creating mud, because I'm using opaque paints. And because I'm using opaque paints, it allows me to layer those colours. If you're using translucent, then you just need to be aware of the colour wheel. See, that turquoise is just a bit more of a pop. It just makes it pop a little bit more, and I love that. I love how the turquoise is added to that. So what I'm going to do now is, because I love that turquoise, I'm going to add a little bit of the ruby. And it's just taking your time just to look at your project and just say, right, where do I need to add a little bit of colour? And it's getting used to your gel press. So now I can move my gel press over where I want it to add the red. So I'm adding the red over the top of the turquoise. And I'm just going to lift it up and just rub over. You see, I'm now getting a better backdrop. I'm now getting a better background. And all you've done, really, is use the gel press like a rubber stamp. And what this also does is it gets you used to how much paint you can add to your gel press before you get an impression. There's lots of techniques you can do with the gel press, with stencils, with everything. But obviously I'm not adding stencils to the gel press. I'm just doing it in a different way. So to be honest, I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this fuchsia. Whew, this is a pop of colour. This is a super, super duper strong colour. So I'm just adding this around the edges of my gel press. Now this fuchsia is powerful, powerful colour. So I'm just adding it, and it's a very light touch of the colour that I'm adding around the outside edges of my gel press. So I've added it to the outside edges just to give me some depth, a bit of oomph to the design. So just press that, and then I can lift it up again, and then I can brayer over the top. If you don't want to use your brayer, depending which is more comfortable for you, you can use your hand. Just trying to think of all different ways you can add. So can you see that that fuchsia is, whoa, it really lifts everything. So I think what I want to do now is I want to just add a touch more of the turquoise. Just a little bit more. Let me make sure that this brayer is free from that fuchsia. And what I want to do is just add a little pop. So the idea now is you can look at your composition of colours and you can say, well, do I want a bit of blue here? You can really pinpoint where you want some colour. And when you're braying, just lift your brayer as you brayer over. And I can place this just where I want. And I don't even have to lift it up. I can just lift that and just see how it's added the colour. Oh, just love it. Absolutely love that. So let's just lift that up. See what I mean about one layer away from magic? Oh, I just love it. Right. What I'm going to do now is grab another scrap of paper. And you won't believe me when I say this, but I've now need to open a new packet of card. Why didn't I do that before I started the video? Because I thought I'd got more card out. I get through bucket loads of card, you know. Right, let me just tear that. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lift that gel press. So the paint is drying on there. Just removing the excess. But look at your scrap piece. Look at your scrap piece of card. You could stamp onto that. Absolutely. Let me just grab some white. I'm grabbing the white because I just want to see if there's anything left on this gel press. Because if there's anything left, it may not. It may make another background. So I'm just checking if it's still sticky. So what you need to do is when you're working with the gel press, if you are ever going to apply a lighter colour on the top, you need to make sure that those paints below are dry, because you need to make sure they're dry, and then this lighter layer that we place on top will lift all those dry layers. Well, that's the idea. And I think we'll just go for it, because at the end of the day, if there's nothing on the gel press, we've not lost anything. So it's not a problem. I don't want to lose that background, this background here. I don't want to lose that. So what I'm going to do is grab another piece of card and brayer any excess white onto this, because I don't want to lose that background that we've already got. So I'm using Snowflake Fresco Finish paint, and this paint dries very quickly. So if you're using this paint instead of the Dina Wakley paints, you need to be aware that you need to work a little bit quicker. So you do need to be aware of that. And what I'm going to do is just place this down onto my card, and then I'm just going to rub over just to see if there's anything on there. Again, you're not losing anything because you can reuse your piece of card. So even if there's nothing on the gel press, you can reuse that. Just give that a firm press, or again, use your brayer. See, I love this as well. Can you see that? That's come from the white, from my brayer. So many backgrounds that you can create. Well, we're just going to have to use this, aren't we? That's just lifted from the white. And we're going to have to use that, aren't we? Of course we are. We're going to have to use that on the opposite page. This is why the gel press is so much fun, because you can just, so I'll just go round like so, just as a sort of circle, because it's just wonderful what it's created. It's fantastic. Just brilliant. And what I'm going to do, because it's a bit of a random shape, is just just distress this. Let's just get the gel press. Let me just get the gel press. So what I want to do now is I want to, because it's not perfectly round, let me just grab these die cut circles. So what I can do now is create some smaller circles because it's not perfectly round, so I can create some smaller circles that I can use from my gel press background. So I've got one there, I've got one there, which I can almost see. Let me just place that back down again. I just can't see this dark edge here. Can I almost see that? I don't know whether I've drawn that. Do you know? You can't get the staff, can you? So I think that's on the card. Let me just draw around this again. Do you sometimes do that? You draw around something and you can't actually see what you've drawn around. I couldn't actually see the circle bit that I'd drawn round. So just draw around this circle. Just so that I've got a smaller circle on my background. And that gel press backdrop is lovely. Obviously you could keep the big circle if you want. I've got the little circles. And I will also use these pieces as well. I'll also use these pieces as well. I'm just trying to think if I've got any smaller circles that I can actually draw around. I've always got circles at hand. Always got circles at hand to see if I can use them. Let me just check if there's any in my... What about this circle? Can I get... Oh, I can just get that circle there. So I've drawn round lids, or I've die cut using a circle die. So you could just draw around a lid if you wish. But hopefully you draw around circles a little bit better than I draw around circles, because I draw around circles like I've had a night on the tiles. So that gives me that circle. Oh, I'm quite enjoying this. And don't forget, there was no plan. I've just come because I thought I would add a video to YouTube to just inspire you in a different way using the same paints. So now I've got two circles with that gel press background, and that was just the mop up. How good is that to have the mop up? And look, I've got a smaller circle here. Oh, this is working out quite well. So let's have that little bit with the fuchsia on. Just draw around this circle. That's why I always keep me little bits of die cut circles just in my trays, just so that I've got them should I need them for a project like this. I love gel press backgrounds. Just think they're so much fun, especially when you add loads of colours, and then the mop-up background is usually better than the other background. There you go. And I can use some of these bits as well that are left over. So let's place them on one side. Let me show you what I've got. I've got no room. That's definitely what I've got. I've got these two backgrounds that we braided off. I've also got these three circles from the mop-up off the gel plate. And then we've got our original one, like so. Love it. Absolutely love it. And if you notice, I haven't made it perfect central. So you can have it this way if you want. You can have it that way, whichever way you want. Mine's going to go that way, I think. Yes, it is. So that's the way it'll be stuck in the journal. Let's bring this in. Let me just see if I want a little bit of stamping or I want to go round. I think I'm going to go round. Just going to get my micron pens. Let me just check if my micron pen works, because that's usually a good sign. And I knew the micron pen that I picked wouldn't work, because that's standard practice. I use them so much that I always pick the one. And I know what you're saying, why don't you just put it in the bin then, Tracy? Right, okay, so what I'm going to do now is you see, I don't know whether to doodle round. I think I'm not going to draw around as in add any text. If you want to do the usual text that we do, going around the circle, that's absolutely fine. Just trying to give you lots of different ways to use your products. I'm also trying to give you some simple ways. You know, there are lots of layers you can add with the gel press, lots of ideas you can use for the gel press, but not everybody wants or can do complicated. So I'm just adding a little scribbly line all the way around my gel press circle, like so. Let me just lift that up so that you can see. It's just a little doodled line. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some little doodles just around the circle, just to give it a little bit more interest. Don't think this pen's particularly good. I think every time I do a Facebook Live, I either need something. Oh, I need some more micron pens. Oh, I need such and such. So now using another micron pen, just to add these little markings around the outside, just to make it pop a little bit more. Now you take your time. You could add some wording around the outside that means something to you, or maybe it's how you're feeling today. You could add that wording around the outside, because nobody needs to read it. It can just be a way of venting on your page. Continuing around the outside edge, and I don't make the scribbles too perfect. You don't want perfection. You want something that looks a little bit more artistic. So take your time, and while you're doodling, just relax or have a sip of that tea. I bet you've forgot your cup of tea now, haven't you, while you're doodling away, which is what I normally do. I take a cup of tea and then I let it go cold. I can't drink cold tea. I just can't drink cold tea. And sorry about that little dingling noise. That dingling noise means there's somebody at our front door. So you could add black circles if you wanted, little dots of circles around the outside edge as well if you wanted. Just trying to give you lots of different ideas about how you could use it. And every time I do something, the circle is going to be used a different way every time I use it. So do I want it that way? Do I want it that way? Tracy doesn't know what way she wants it. She's just going to keep turning it round to make you dizzy, because I haven't got a clue which way I want it at the moment. You see, if you wanted as well, I'm not going to, but you could also add your circles on the top. I don't want to do that because I don't want to hide all the detail I've got. So what I'm going to do is just move that out of the way. I'm going to bring in these little pieces that I braided off. And what I want to do is use the owls. I want to use some of the older sets because I just think it's good to get those out. So let's just pick, and they're definitely male and female. That's me, I think they're male and female. So I'm going to use the female, as I call it. And what you can do is you can take it and just say, do I want to add the bright colour behind, or do I just want a touch of colour behind? So it's entirely up to you. Because that circle on the first one is quite strong, it's dominant, I don't want to have an owl that doesn't pop on the background. So I think I will use the paler background. You might not see it much, but you will see it in the flesh. When you're working at home, you'll definitely see it. But I don't want the colour to be too overpowering. I want that owl to pop against the background. So just take my time. You might not see it, but it has got some of the pale colour in the background. What I'm going to do now is stamp the owl I'm not going to add, I will add this to my journal page, but I don't want to add it to the journal page till I've done the stamping. And I want to decide whether I want the owl on the inside or I want the owl slightly popping over the edge of the circle. And I think I quite like it with the feet over the edge of the circle, like that. So that's what I'm going to do. So just add my ink, which is VersaFine Clair Nocturne black ink. Just give that a good ink. Even though it's a small stamp, I still give it a good layer of ink with the Nocturne black. And I'm going to just use my acrylic block just to decide where I want that owl. And I'm going to add it here. Now, it doesn't matter if you don't get a perfect impression, because really you're just doing it for the feet, because you're going to overlay it on that anyway. So it's not really too much of a detriment if you don't get the whole image perfectly. But as always, when you're stamping onto acrylic paint, just make sure that you allow that ink to rest on the background. Don't be in too much of a rush to lift that up. Just allow it to rest. I've got the All & Create acrylic blocks, so I can just lift if I want. But that should be okay for that small stamp. I've let it rest and it's fine. So I've now got the owl on the background. And as you can see, we don't want to leave it like that. We want it to pop against the background. So what I can do is cut out my owl, which is on that light backdrop. So I'm not wasting any of that white card that we braided off onto. I'm just going to, you don't need to cut the legs out because you've got the legs at the base. So just cutting the body of the owl out. And this will pop against the background because it's lighter. It's still got some tones of those background colours, but like in the pastels, because it was just the mop-up that we used. And that, I think that's what I like about when you do like have a gel press session, that you can take your time. You see, that will now pop against that backdrop. It pops a lot more. What I'm going to do now is stick my owl down. Before I stick my owl down, I just have a think about where I'm going. So what I'm thinking is, I've got these die cut circles. And I'm thinking I could add it here just so that it pops over the top. Just looking at that in camera, so we can decide on that, because we're going to add some stamping and some other layers, so we can decide on that later. Not a problem at all. We can decide how we want to add that. So we've got our owl. And what I'm going to do before I add that owl, I'm going to add a little bit more stamping. So take your time and decide what stamping you want to add. I'm going to add some black stamping. So I'm using my numerator stamp, which is stamp 400. And I'm going to add some of those black numbers, just to add another pop of black, because we've added black around the outside edges. I've got a black stamping, so I just want to add a touch more black stamping just to my design. So what I'm going to do is just making sure before I add anything, I always have a think about whether I want to add some coloured stamping or whether I just want to add it in black. You see, you could add some. I'm going to add some touches of yellow anyway. I think what I'm going to do is add a touch of stenciling as well. So I'm just going to reach for my stencil. Sometimes it's good just to have a think about what you want to add, just to make things come to life and give them more of a pop. So what I've got is I've got the large A4 circular stencil, and I'm going to use some white paint just to make things pop a little bit more. I don't want to be in too much of a rush to put everything together and then not be happy with what I've done. So I'm taking this white snowflake paint that we already have out, take a good dollop of that paint, and I'm just going to add some white paint to the background. Just take a little bit more, just so it's a little bit whiter, because that stencil has got some colour on. So just make it a little bit whiter. You see, for me, can you see? This is what happens when you don't clean your stencils. If you don't clean your stencils, let me just show you. Can you see? It's muddy. The stencil is muddy. So I'm just using a baby wipe just to remove some of that colour. What it'll have been done is it may have been used in a workshop, when I was doing a workshop. And when you do that, sometimes you're in a rush and you don't clean your stencil from Distress ink or Distress Oxide ink. So if you don't clean it, especially when you're adding white, you don't get a good impression. So just take your time just to wipe that stencil. Sometimes it happens, but you just have to take a few moments just to wipe that. Just to wipe that stencil, just so that it's a little bit cleaner. It's so easy to just get mud. So what I'm going to do, you see, you wanted a video on how to clean stencils, didn't you? Not. But this is what happens when you record a live video. See what I mean? That's mud. That's mud on there. So I'm just cleaning that off. Sometimes we just have to take our time just to do that. Right. What I'm going to do now is add that white paint again. Take my time and add that white paint. And we'll try again. Yes, that's much brighter. A much brighter white paint. That's all I wanted. So we just clean this up just so that it's not a mess. And what I'm going to do is just spritz, excuse my arm, just going to spritz this white paint with some water. So just spritz it lightly with water and then just add your circles to your background. Use a piece of kitchen roll just to dab those circles onto the background. And like with everything, you need to not be in too much of a rush to lift that up. Just give it time to rest, just so that the paint absorbs into the cardstock, because there are lots of layers on that background. So just take your time just to allow that to sit on there, and then you can just lift up and you've got a pop of white, which works brilliantly. So we're just going to move that out the way, just so we can clean our mess up. So now you can have a sip of your tea just while you clean the mess up. Just wipe over your brayer just so that you've got rid of some of that white paint. My brayer's due for a clean. Needs a good wash, because I keep going to the next video and saying, oh, I'll wash it next time. No, I go to the next video and I haven't washed it. So it does need a good soak at the moment. So just give your area a good clean, just so that you don't get in any mess. It is worth it in the end. Let's bring this in, and I'm happier with that now. Just because it's got that pop of white on there, I'm much happier. You see, the owl will go here like this, and that works much nicer. So what I'm going to do is get my heat tool. I had to buy another heat tool, but we've got one. So just give that a dry, because I want to stamp over the top. Just take the time to add those layers. And I just love how the white pops against the background. sometimes it's all you need is some white. Just check that's dry. And what I'm going to do now is grab some scrap paper. And you just need to make sure that that owl is completely dry, because you've stamped onto an acrylic surface, which is plastic. And because of that, the ink sort of rests on the top. It doesn't soak into the card because it's not absorbent. So therefore, you just need to make sure that your owl, you blot it, just to make sure that it's okay. So my owl's going to go here like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a little bit of washi, and I'm going to use my cut, tear and layer washi tape. And I've got some that I've got on one side, like you do. You've always got bits of washi tape on one side. I have anyway. Lying around everywhere. So I'm just taking some of this and I'm going to tear in thin strips. And before I add the owl, I'm going to layer some of the strips just behind the owl, just so it becomes part of the design. Now, I don't want to add thick, bulky clumps of washi tape. I don't want to detract from the background and the focal image too much. So that's why I tear into thin strips. I do love when they're finer layers. And as you can see, I'm just tearing. I've got a little bit here, like so. That's it. So my owl's so I'm always aware of where my owl's going. And what I'm going to do now, I'm getting in it. Do you know, 2 minutes is taking me to get in a mess. I'm going to bring in my ephemera digits. Just add, oops, I'll be looking for all these later. I'm going to add some of these little numbers to my owl. I love these little owl characters, and it's nice to do something that's on the cuter side sometimes, just to be a little bit different. So can you see I've got those little numbers stamped on my owl? So what I want to do is take my numerator stamp, which is this A6 one, and I'm going to add some detail in black now. Now that I've added this white, I can add some detail in black. So I'm just going to take my numerator stamp, add the Nocturne Black ink, just to bring a little pop of black. And then I'm going to add that to my design. So I think we'll go for around about here. And if I just lift my stamp and curl my stamp, it just makes it a little bit more random if you just sort of curl it. There we go. So we've got a lovely pop of black stamping there. If I just lift that up, let me just wipe my hands because that's off the stamp. So you then don't want to add that to your work. And let me just wipe my hand, because you then don't want to add that to your work. Take your scrap paper and blot, just to make sure that that ink is dry, because when you blot it, you'll lift this layer of ink because you've stamped onto that plastic layer of paint. So you need to blot it. If you don't blot, you also need to dry. So you just need to be aware of that when you're using the VersaFine Clair on a non-porous surface. You need to blot it. So I'm just going to continue with the blotting. I think that's important, just to make sure that I don't go and spoil everything. So that's blotted. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more washi tape. Again, with those fine layers, let me see if I can cut it a bit finer or tear it a bit finer. Just so they're not too thick. I do faff a little bit with the washi tape. It's just the way I am, because I like to just make sure I've got those fine layers. A little bit of a thicker layer now, coming down from the top of that circle down into, use my copy paper, down into the numbers. If I add it down into the numbers, it looks more like the numbers are part of the background rather than just plonked on the top. So I've added that washi so it looks more part of the background. So just tear that a little bit more. I don't want to sort of hide all the numbers. I just want to add some of that washi tape, and I keep using my blotting paper just so that I don't smudge that ink. So that's nice. I love that washi tape. So let me just lift this up. I can't lift it up now, just so you can see what you're getting in the background. And I always think it's good just to take your time. My owl is going to go here, so now I can add my owl. Now I'm happy with some of the background. I can add my owl. Of course, your adhesive is never flowing just when you want it to. I like that he's in a paler colour, just so that he pops. Take my copier paper once again and just press that owl down. I use the copier paper because it just makes sure that if I've got any excess glue, that it goes onto the paper and I can just remove any excess that I've got. What I'm also going to do now is take a grey Inktense pencil and just make that owl. Let's sharpen the pencil. I always like to use sharp pencils. Just find it so much easier if I use a sharp pencil. And if you keep the shavings from your Inktense pencils, you can also use those because you can spritz them with water and some colour will come out of the sharpenings. I've got white paint from somewhere, don't ask me where. Probably the baby wipe. So I'm just going to go around my owl with the Inktense pencil. Just so he's a bit more defined against that backdrop. He'll pop. If you don't have an Inktense pencil, don't worry too much, because you can use either Distress Oxide inks or Distress inks in a grey, or you can use some watercolour, whichever works best for you. So I'm just going to blend that out just to make him pop a little bit more. And the Inktense work well on the painted backdrop, so it's not too much of a problem. Just so that the owl doesn't get lost in the background, just give it a touch of shading. And I think this is always my favourite part, is, you know, sort of adding your finishing touches to the design. But I'm the same in the garden. When I'm gardening, I do exactly the same. I take my time just to look what my pots look like, so I'm no different when I'm doing the garden. Just blending that out a little bit more, just gathering it out. Just so he pops. That's nice. Leave that there in case I need it. So as you can see, we've got our lovely background. And now what I'm wondering, what I want to do is whether I want to add some more touches to the background, just with some foliage, or what, do you know, I don't want to overpower it too much. But what I have got is, on this washi tape is a postage stamp. quite like this postage stamp. Of course, I'm going to tear the edges just so it's not quite so regimented. I wonder if you do this with washi tape. Tear it, you know, just so that it's not too perfect. Maybe it's just me. So I'm just going to add that little touch. And it's often a good idea if when you're adding your washi tape, if it's straight, that often adds to the design as well, if it's a little bit straight. I always find with a circle, you have to look a couple of times just to make sure that you've got it just how you need it. Just a little bit here. And I know exactly what my page needs. Well, it's not even a page yet, it's just... It's not even a page, it's just a circle at the minute. Just add that little bit there. Just so it's not quite so regimented, that's it. And what I'm going to do now is add some pops of yellow. Pops of yellow will bring life, just like white does, pops of yellow will bring life to your design. So take that yellow, which is lemon in this case, and I'm going to add some little touches of lemon. And I just love the pops of lemon. I just think it really works just to bring a little bit of life to your page. And I'll lift this up just so that you can see. And I think we'll add some splatters of yellow as well. Let me lift this up so you can see how those yellow just bring it to life a little bit. And I'll just get a little brush, maybe a fan brush would be nice. I keep putting my spritzer bottle back. I'm trying to be tidy, but it's not really working, is it? Let's face it. So I'm going to pick up those yellow with my fan brush. And I'm just going to add some splatters of yellow. And because I'm using the fan brush, it's given me, and just extend it to the outside, just so that it's part of the page. Just extend it to the outside. And what I'm going to do is, just while I've got this yellow out, let's just move that to one side. Just bring in the journal page. Just bring in your journal page while you've got that bit of yellow left. I can't tell you how much stuff is falling on the floor. While you've got that yellow out, just add some yellow to the edges of your journal page. Just so that it looks like this journal page is going to coordinate with the whole of your design. So I'm just adding some to the opposite page as well. Just to make sure that it looks a bit more thought out. You don't want to just plonk your circles in your journal and then try and make it fit as if it, because it's just going to, if you just plonk it in your journal, it's just going to look like it's plonked. You do need to think about the design. So just adding these yellow splatters just brings in whatever's in the background of those circles into the background of the journal pages. And you've guessed it, I've added some splatters to my iPad as well. Well, it has to be done, doesn't it? You have to add splatters to your iPad. So I'll just place that. Where can I place this brush? Nobody knows where I can place this brush because there's too much mess everywhere. Now going to wipe this up. Give that a wipe. Like so. And I've now got that in my journal. I've now got splatters, which you might not be able to see on camera. If I lift it up, you might be able to see the splatters. But I have got some yellow splatters on the page. Just so that it doesn't look like I've just stuck this journal page down with the circle with no thought. And I will add a few more details, don't worry. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to add this circle to my journal page. I'm just using a PVA glue just to adhere it. to the page. Obviously, when you're doing this page, you will let everything dry beautifully. You won't try and do things when the paint isn't dry. I'm trying to record the video live, so I'm doing everything in real time, so to speak, as in I'm not editing the video, I'm just doing it straight away. So just place that evenly on the page. Just press that down. You can use a piece of your copier paper if you need to press it down. Just add that circle like so. So just take your time just to add that. Just to add your circle. Make sure you've got nothing on your fingers. And then what I'm going to do is take a little bit of the washi tape. You've got to make it look like it's all meant to be in there. So the washi tape is going to extend onto the page, just so it looks like everything's meant to be. Just taking a few more touches of that washi tape. It brings the circle into the page and the page into the circle, so that it doesn't look like I've just placed it onto the page with no thought whatsoever. And I want to make these two pages work together. Just adding some washi tape across the top here, and I can add it straight across my page, no problem at all. That's it. And then what I'm going to do is, let's just move this up just so you can see the rest. I talk like I've got gallons of room. Just move this page up. Hilarious. There's no room to move it anywhere. But I'm going with the flow, and that's the best thing to know. And what I've got is I've got these circles from the mop-ups. And you can add these to your page however you wish. You can adhere them however you wish. Mine are going to go like this. Just make sure this is stuck down. Got a little bit of plastic. So just mess around with your design. You can have it like this, like that, so that it's just on the page. And then you could have the owl just sitting on the page. Just trying to decide. Let me take my other owl. Let's get the other owl. It's easier said than done. Get the other owl. Yes, that's easy. So mess around with your circles. I like that dark patch there. And then what you can do is add your owl here, like so. So do I want the 3 circles like that? I think I will, because I'm going to have a little bit of stamping, and I'll also have a little bit of washi tape. So let's add our circles. But spend a little bit of time messing around with how you're going to add them. You guessed it, I couldn't even find the adhesive. So we're going to make it so that these circles work with the others, works with the other page. And I want to just make sure that this is visible. So just adhere these, just move that up a little bit. That's it. Move that like so. So just play around with how you want the circles. If you don't want circles, you can have squares. If you don't want squares, you can have oblongs, you can have diamonds, you can have whatever you want. And I'm just going to use that copier paper just to press that down. Just to take the time to press that down. And then what I'm going to do is find my eraser and then just erase my pencil lines from when I drew around the circles. because I don't want the pencil lines on there. So just erase those, just to make it a little bit cleaner. There we go. Now we're going to have eraser bits all over the place, which is what you'd expect, isn't it, really? There we go. And then what I'm going to do, and my hubby's just bought me a drink cup, which is lovely, really nice. So I'm going to take some more of this washi tape. I've got a whole strip of this washi tape. I love messing with washi tape. I don't know what it is. I do think I'm slightly strange, but never mind. Just going to add some of this washi tape just to bring the page into my design. I don't have to cover the whole page. It just has to be a suggestion of what there is on the opposite page. And it doesn't even have to match the opposite page. It's just that I'm loving doing the double page spreads. And I want to keep you as occupied as possible. So there we go. That's just a mere suggestion of what's on the opposite page. So considering we're talking about mere suggestions on the opposite page, we therefore need to bring in some of these yellow scratchy lines to bring in some of that mere suggestion from the opposite page. So I'm going to add some of those scratchy lines to my page. And it's good because I don't actually think about how I'm adding them. I do it different on each page, just so that you're not making a complete replica on the opposite page. So just let's add some here, just so it looks, that's it. I don't need to overpower it too much, just extend these lines a little bit, just onto this page here. There we go. So the paint's quite thick there, so you're going to have to let that dry if you add it quite thickly. I'm now closing in on my space. My space is closing in on me. So just so that you can see the pages, just so you can see those. Now what I want to do, as I don't like to rush things, I like to make them look finished. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go around this circle just to add some of that Inktense pencil, just because it then looks like that when I added this circle, it was intended. It wasn't an afterthought. I intended to do this, which I did, but we need the viewer that's looking in on the journal pages to realise that this was all an intended design. So just going around my circles. Don't need to go around the washi tapes. And again, you would let your scratchy lines dry. I added them first because I felt comfortable in adding them to my design at that point. So I'm just going to blend this out, just so we've got some shading just around the circle. So just take your time. If you've got a little bit too much water or it's too dark, just take some of that off. Move your page around just to make it simpler, just to add that shading. And then I'm just taking a bit off on my hand if I've got too much of the grey and it becomes too dark. I just take that off my hand. I think my water brush is running out of water as well, so just spritz some water. Again, one of my favourite parts is adding this blending around the outside edge. You may not want the blending. You could add dots if you wanted. You don't have to just add definition by adding the black shading, the grey shading. You can add definition in different ways. Just blending that out. It's actually harder keeping the journal page in the picture than it is doing anything else. Just so that you can see what I'm doing. Now my water brush is not all. It just looks like it belongs on the page now with that touch of shading. Let's move it up a little bit so you can see me do the little circles. Try to keep that in camera. Just blend. Try not to touch those lemon touches that you've added. And what I've noticed is when you're doing this, I mean, you'll be quiet anyway because you won't be talking to yourself. But because I'm talking to myself, the minute I start blending, it makes me go quiet. And I know some of you are thinking, oh, that's her first, Tracy quiet. But it does make me go quiet. Let me just bring this page in so that you can see what I'm doing. Just adding this around here. Just blend it out. Don't touch your yellow bits that you've added the scratchy lines to. And I haven't added it where the washi tape is. I've now got water on my craft sheet. Let me just mop that up. I am trying to put things back when I've used them, but it's not working. Never does. So what you can see now is I've got this. Now, if you want, you can keep it exactly like that. You don't have to add anything else if you don't wish. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, what words have we got here? I'm going to add some washi tape words. So I've got one here that says imagination. Again, I'm going to add a torn edge, so I just start that off. And I don't want to like just sort of plonk it somewhere. I want to add it with the other washi tapes, but I just want it to give me that pop of black. I don't want to just plonk it anywhere. And then I want that touch of black here as well, just to balance it out. So that's just the edges of the washi tape, just to balance that out a little bit. What I'm going to do now is just move my journal out of the way. And what I'm going to do now is take my other owl. So I'm going to take the owl that I think I call the masculine owl. So I'm going to take that one. So where's the other packaging? One is called Hoot and one is called Owl. So I'm using this one because he's definitely masculine. And what I'm going to do is stamping onto the background we braid off, because I can add a little bit more colour to this page because I haven't got the powerful circle that's got all that colour on. So it's not too much of a problem. So I can add him to that painted surface. And I can just go round exactly where I want to add the colour and just stamp him onto the painted background. Now, you just need to make sure that you allow that ink to rest. Give it time to soak into that surface. And again, I'm stamping onto a painted layer. So I just need to be aware of that because it's not porous. And I'm using an ink pad that's got a good open time, which means that it stays wetter longer. So I need to be aware that I'm going to have to blot that image. And I love that the background now coordinates with the other page that we've done. Take that scrap paper and blot. You're not going to get away with not blotting. You need to make sure that you blot that image because you don't want to smudge him. And like me, dump it all on the floor when you've finished, just so that you've got loads to pick up afterwards. So this time I am going to cut his little legs out. because I'm not adding him to the page. I'm going to cut his little legs out. They're not too difficult, but you could stamp directly onto the page and just cut the body out. My page is a little bit bulky on the opposite side, but what I normally do is put a piece of mount board underneath, and then I can stamp onto the page, or I add a book underneath, and it gives me a nice sturdy surface to work on. So cut my owl out. I love these owls, just think they're so cute and quirky. And I like to show how to use the cute and quirky images in my style as well, because we all do it in different ways, don't we? So just cut him out like so. I'm going to have a sip of my tea in a minute, especially now my husband's made it for me. Just cut his, you see, did you see the concentration then taking over, trying not to cut my little owl's legs off? So just bringing my cup of tea in, look, I've got a cup of tea to prove that I'm doing it in a relaxed manner. And live on the video, I'm having a sip of the tea, and look at the owl. That's better. My voice always goes when I'm talking too much. So I've now got a lovely owl. And what I want to do is use that ephemera digit stamp just to add some little numbers to my owl, just so it coordinates with the other one. Yes, it's only a little detail, but I like the little details. Just going to give that a blot, just to make sure. Then we're going to move these out the way. Grab this little owl. Again, stuck for space. And I'm going to add, you see, I'm going to add him there, like that. He's so lovely. He's just lovely. See, you play around and add him in different places. Now he's going to go that. This is what I'm like. It's worse than having those dolls that you used to have when you were little and used to play around with them and dress them up out of bits of card. Yeah. I'm exactly the same with my artwork. Move the bits around here, there and everywhere. Just add that. Put the lid on my adhesive, which I keep forgetting to do. Add my owl. See, and I've still kept it so you've still got the touches of that fuchsia there on the mop-up. You can see that little touch of fuchsia there. I love that little touch because I covered the other one up there. Just press with my copier paper just to make sure it sticks nicely. Oh yes, I like him. Grab my grey Inktense pencil again, because I keep putting it back like you do, but I'm trying not to lose it. So I'm going to add some shading around the owl. Just because I want him to pop as well against those circles. Don't want to cover that bit of fuchsia up, because then it coordinates with my other page. So just blend this out. And just add some to the base of the owl, just so he looks grounded. That's it. You don't want your owl to look like he's floating in midair. We like our owls to be grounded, don't we? And sometimes you forget when you're on camera just to have a look up every now and then, just to make sure you're still in the camera. You get so engrossed in your pages. But I do hope you're having a good Saturday. I said I wasn't going to do anything today. I said I was just going to chill. I say this every single time. I'll just chill today. And then Ian will put some sport on or some football, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm not sitting here watching this. I know, I'll go and fill another page in my journal. And then I drag you all along with me on the same journey. I'm good like that, dragging you all along. I've now lost the lid to my water brush. I should really pan into my craft room just so that you can see the total mess and devastation that has been caused. What I want to do now is just add a little bit of stamping. So I'm going to use this numerator stamp. Don't work over your work like I always do, but just so that you know, I'm going to ink that number 6 up. The number 6 and a few of the other little details around the edge. So I'm using my numerator stamp just to give me a little bit of stamping. But don't do it over your journal page because you're going to get in a right mess. And I'm just going to add a little bit of stamping to the top edge here. And I want it to be a little bit random, so I'm just lifting the edges up. I'm not looking for perfection. Just love that touch of stamping. And what I want to do now is add a little bit of stamping here to balance that out. So what I'm going to do is pick another area on the stamp. Let me just take this number 8, maybe that little bit there and that bit there. Do you talk to your stamps like I do? Because I talk to my stamps, I'm good like that. Hey ho, we've all got some bad habits, haven't we? So I'm just going to add that number 8 there. Just holding the stamp up so I don't get that other area that I inked. That's perfect. Just a random little bit of stamping is just what I want. What I also want is I want some white splatters just to add to my page because I love white splatters. If you don't like white splatters, don't add your white splatters. Everybody's different. And what I want to do is add a word. So let's just put this on one side, place this on one side, and then, which one do I want? We'll have the word owl from this stamp set. That's my acrylic block. Tiniest word, and I've got the biggest acrylic block going, which is good. Just grabbing a white because I've just got a bit of black ink just on my acrylic block and I don't want to transfer that. Let's try and use the word the right way up, is often a good sign. A scrap of paper. At least you know I get in just as much mess as all you other creatives. I don't know how I end up with like a millimetre of space. Just add this word owl. And I'm using the Versamark, not the Versamark, the Versafine Clair. I always call it Versamark when I'm getting engrossed. Versafine Clair ink to my stamp. And then I'm just going to cut that out. And again, I'm not using a guillotine for this, and I don't need to blot. Should be okay because it's on a porous surface. And just to make sure, I can just press it on the background just to make sure that that ink is dry, and it is. Bring in my journal. Oh, I'm loving this. Can you tell I enjoy my journal at the moment? And what I'm going to do is add the word owl here, like this. So just take that. Add the word owl. Just balance it out a little bit. And I've just, if you've noticed, I've got it in just a little cluster on this page. I've not taken over the whole page. It's a mere suggestion of the opposite page. So I've left open space. Open space for me is very important. It's important in a lot of the work that I do. Sometimes I cover the whole page, but even when I cover the whole page, even if I cover it with blue, there'll still be some open space. Even if it's blue open space. Open space doesn't mean it has to be white. It just means an open area. Adding some Inktense pencil just around that owl sentiment. Again, so it just pops against that backdrop. like so. Oh yes. And I think I just want another washi tape, and I think we will use the word embrace. So I'm just, oh, I've got washi tape everywhere as well, stuck on every surface you can think of. So I'm going to use the word embrace because I think we should embrace everything around us, nature-wise. Just add this here, like so, and just add a pop of that black to balance it out just here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up to make sure that you can see all the detail in the page. I hope you enjoy this for a Saturday, or whether you do it in the week. I just hope it gives you a little bit more inspiration of how to use the owls, which I just think are adorable. And now I know one little touch that's just needed. Just staring at the camera there, take your white, and because I'm standing up, my arm's right in the camera, so I've just taken a little bit of this yellow, and I'm just going to add a little bit to my owl. Just little bits to my owl. That's it. I don't need too much. I don't want to overpower it. Just adding a little touch. Let's just lift that up again, just so you can see that little touch of yellow to the owl. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it passes an hour or so for you. I hope you have a lovely weekend, a lovely Saturday and Sunday. And I will see you all next week for the workshop, for those that are joining me. If there's any workshops that you'd like to join, I've got pre-recorded ones and live ones. You can email me, tracy@craft-addicts.co.uk. Thanks very much to those of you that watch and for all your support, and I'll see you all soon. Love to all. Bye for now. Bye.